yes, my friends, the world, is constantly changing, and along with it, the international financial system is being reformed. Decades pass, after which the market suddenly changes the rules of the game and forces all its participants to adapt to new realities. Right now, we are living in an era of great changes, but without delving into all these boring twists and turns. In global politics, it can already be confidently said that in the near future, the financial sector will change significantly. Predicting what will happen tomorrow is quite a challenging task for most people, but we can certainly understand the past well. Few newcomers are aware, but 70 years ago, trading on the stock exchange was not quite what we are used to seeing today. Moreover, it has managed to radically change several times over the past centuries. In my videos, I often share practical skills with you, but knowing the theoretical part is just as important for those aspiring to be professional traders. And today, we will talk about the history of the creation and development of our monetary system. This single video will give you a complete understanding of the overall picture and in some sense even prepare you for the future. To make my story more interesting to listen to, we will simultaneously test an intriguing trading strategy consisting of a ZigZag, the Keltner Channel, and the RCI oscillator. I will try to increase my starting deposit of $10, hopefully by hundreds of times. At the same time, I will be talking about fascinating events from the history of international trade. It will be mega useful, informative, and illustrative, so make yourself comfortable and watch until the end. Well, let's get started. And we'll begin perhaps by getting acquainted with today's set of indicators. One of the main roles today is played by the ZigZag for me. It has standard settings. Number 2 is the Keltner Channel. There are a couple of nuances here. Note Yamaha period 24. I also changed the color of the indicator itself to make it more visible on the chart. And also, we have a regular RCI unchanged, 14 period. We will use it today to confirm various situations. Well, now it's worth clarifying how we will open trades and what we will pay attention to. Look, first of all, we are interested in prolonged movement within certain trends. We will pay special attention to the breakout of the Keltner channel, as well as to the intersection of zones highlighted by the ZigZag, and of course, the return inside. The Keltner bands. This is always a strong signal to open a position. I have shown you the basics. Now it's time to move on to its real practical implementation. Let's go. Quite so. A decent trade can be opened in the cake. I'm in the position. Let me explain why I did it this way. It's quite simple. In fact, we are observing a bounce from the lower part of the channel. Then, another one downwards. There is no reason not to doubt or to doubt the further decline in price, at least to the boundary of the lower Keltner channel to the support zone. So let me start my educational session on the history of global trade. We all know that at one time, gold was in charge. This payment method was in use, even in very ancient times, let's say in the distant past. However, markets did not become global immediately. This happened only in the second half of the 19th century. In that era, the largest countries in the world agreed that gold would be the only means of payment. And that's how the era of the gold coin standard began. In those times, everything was sold and bought using precious metals. This seemed normal and a common commodity. Everything else, export possibly, all services. By the way, my first deal is in profit. Wonderful. Let's continue trading on other pairs. Let's go. So, a good code on the chart for the dollar point. I enter a short trade and explain why I did so. It's all very simple here. Observe another pullback from the upper part of the Keltner channel, so we are just waiting for the price to fall down. That's all. While we have time, let's return to our topic, and so, the gold standard. By the way, it's strange, but many people living today perceive this system as the best time of the global financial system. Of course, that's not true. These are all misconceptions. That time had its advantages, but there were two significant drawbacks. Firstly, the gold standard made countries unequal in the market. Who has more reserves? The one with more precious metals can afford to buy foreign goods. And secondly, friends, gold. It is not an infinite resource, as you all know very well. Each year, the trade turnover between countries grew, and eventually it simply exceeded the total gold reserves on the planet. This happened during the First World War. It was at this moment that the crisis of the gold standard began. Meanwhile, we are closing the second deal in profit. For now, let's stay on this same chart. I see a small potential. So, what happened to the world? Due to the shortage of gold, it stopped being exchanged for banknotes. Meanwhile, the issuance of the banknotes themselves was increased. This led to gold seemingly disappearing from the economy. States who used it as their reserve, but ordinary people could no longer freely exchange it for bills, which essentially served as a receipt of ownership of gold. Something needed to be done about this, so right after World War I, there was the General Conference and the system was modernized. Now, in addition to gold, the British pound and the US dollar became common exchange equivalents. The system itself began to be called the gold exchange standard. Initially, everything was going well. I'm opening another contract also in short. Let's see what happens. So initially, the system worked, but eventually, of course, everything got out of control. The problem turned out to be the devaluation of the pound due to World War II. The pound was very strong at that time. Something needed to be done about this. That is, the pound was practically claiming the role of a universal means of payment worldwide. However, during the war, it completely devalued and lost its position. In other words, it simply became redundant in the international trade system. Therefore, abandoning the pound was just, let's say, a matter of time. And that's what happened. In 1944, the world's leaders gathered in the American town of Bretton Woods. They had to decide what the currency system would look like. Immediately after the end of World War II, at this moment, it began to take on the shape we know today. By the way, the third trade is in profit. I think we will continue to monitor this same chart. It is quite likely that we will open again in a minute. And also what they decided, what have the leaders of all the countries of this world decided? The dollar has been recognized as the international settlement currency. All other currencies became tied to it. The value of the dollar remained fixed. $35 could be exchanged for a troy ounce of gold. If necessary, participating countries could convert dollars into precious metal upon request. In other words, the American currency became an international means of payment. This status was recognized for one simple reason. The dollar could be exchanged for gold at a fixed rate. Fixed. That's it. It turns out that the American currency acted as a kind of intermediary, and the countries recognized and valued gold but settled with paper that was simply equated to its value. I draw your attention. Another short sale. A move anticipating further decline after breaking through the central Keltner Channel. A routine situation. By the way, the IMF was created under the Bretton Woods system. With its help, countries could share financial mutual assistance. It's important to understand the specifics of that time. The dollar became the main currency, not without reason. The USA was the only country whose economy was not destroyed after World War II. America was thriving, which cannot be said about Europe. Most of civilization after World War II was in ruins, guys. Naturally, the only need people had was stability, and the USA at that time could provide it. They offered free exchange of dollars for gold. No other country in the world at that time could afford such a thing, so everyone just accepted it. There were no other options, just another deal, plus I'm counting on another short position as well. On the same chart we have every chance, let's wait. Well, as you might have guessed, this system also didn't last long. Again, a failure occurred due to a crisis, this time purely economic. In 1967, inflation was rampant, and the USA was trying to cover the balance of payments deficit by simply printing more banknotes, which led to a surplus of dollars in the world. That is, both the real value of the currency and the value of the dollar that backed it were falling. Some countries took advantage of the situation and requested to exchange dollars for precious metals at the fixed rate that had been established earlier. In other words, gold was being drained from the USA on a massive scale, and they had no other choice. But such conditions would hardly satisfy anyone, so active discussions on the prospects of further reform began. Another short deal. We are waiting for further decline. While there is time, I will finish talking about the demise of Bretton Woods. Look, The system was essentially finished off by the Vietnam War. And the USA withdrew from this agreement themselves. America simply stopped fulfilling its own obligations to exchange dollars for gold. Therefore, all the previous rules, so to speak, simply lost their relevance. Some might suggest that the United States suffered a fiasco and failed. However, we all know that in reality, even to this day, the world depends on the dollar. In fact, America only benefited from the collapse of its system. On its ruins, a new agreement was born, which exists to this day. This international monetary system is known as the Jamaican system, as it was formed on the island of the same name in the Caribbean. Meanwhile, I'm in the black again. Let's probably finish with this pair. Some breakout that's not very interesting. Let's continue with other currency pairs. Let's go. Wonderful situation. I see an excellent entry point. Swiss franc, Japanese yen, already in a long trade, based on a bounce from the central line of the Keltner Channel, anticipating further growth. Let's return to our topic, friends. How is today's currency system organized? Look, now exchange rates are set not by the state, but by the market. So they are floating, not fixed as before. The gold standard is no longer relevant. Regulators from different countries can buy precious metals, like just a simple commodity at market prices. Here's another difference from the current system compared to the previous ones is the introduced SDR standard, that is special borrowing rights. These are, in general, the world's money with which you can form currency relations. In practice, a thing questionable, to be honest with you. In reality, everything is still decided by the dollar. And also global politics, relations between countries and other things that do not interest me at all. I got a bit carried away. 6th deal in a row. I will continue to look for entry points on other currency pairs. Let's go. Yes, I will enter on euro to pound. Opening right now. Long on the guys, long. Let me explain why. I changed my decision. The price movement has a clearly upward trend. It might seem like entering on a red candle, but it touches the trend line. It's just a rebound. Nothing more. We wait for the deal to close and continue our discussion. Yes. So how did the USA win? The fact is, the collapse of the Bretton Woods system did not diminish the international prestige of the dollar at all. On the contrary, all market conditions dictated the necessity to abandon gold. This metal simply stopped being needed by anyone, except perhaps for watches. In other words, in 100 years, the USA achieved replacing gold with their national currency, gold. And yet this precious metal was in use for millennia worldwide. Why did everyone accept the dollar? Because it is reliable, just as the US economy is reliable, and now everything is forgiven for it. Another deal in the plus, friends. $508 on the balance. Moving on to find the next one. Let's go. Quite good. All attention on the Australian dollar to US dollar chart. I'm going long, and now I'll show you the logic. What you do, we see on the chart, we see an interesting structure called consolidation. The price has slightly risen, started trading tightly in a narrow range. Everything indicates that the quote is aimed upwards one way or another. That's exactly why we are in the trade. Returning to our currency system, you've probably heard about the American national debt. Of course, everyone has heard about it. Have you ever wondered why no one is bothered that it keeps growing and growing? Why don't creditors demand their money back? You understand. Right, because the entire economy is based on dollars. Depositors receive their payments in the same currency and spend it on their needs. In fact, the US national debt reflects not terrible audacity, but the inefficiency of the US trade system. It shows the growth of overall global trade turnover. Great, the deal is in profit, friends. We continue to trade further. For now, I see the point in staying on the same chart. It is very likely that we will be able to open another deal here. Let's wait. So we live in a world where everything is tied to the US, everyone uses the dollar, and everyone is satisfied with it. This currency is indeed being printed with new bills non-stop, and the debt keeps growing and growing. But what underpins the faith in the dollar? Why is it so stable? There is a paradox here. The dollar is stable because everyone believes in it. Everyone believes in it because it is stable. It's a closed loop. The US is actually a powerful country with enormous capabilities, and this ensures its position in the current financial system. That's all. At the same time, it holds this position because it is also worthy of such a role, a strong state. You understand, right? This is the status quo. I'm opening another long position. Here we are expecting further growth. As I said, there was a breakout. Excellent. Now we can speculate a bit about the future. Look, history teaches us that nothing in life is eternal. And probably the Jamaican system, which is in place now, will also change someday. This could happen in 5 years, maybe in 50 years. Let's make predictions here that are reckless for our country. But it is worth understanding that the world has changed significantly since the time the Jamaican system began its work. Impoverished third world countries have become influential economies that must now be reckoned with. This is a fact. There is a certain demand for justice because some countries believe that the USA holding its position does so, let's say, undeservedly. I will not evaluate what is happening, but the fact that the Jamaican system is working is a fact. This is a structure in which there is one. The founders have many simply satisfied partners. That's all. Whether it should be changed is decided not by us, and certainly not by more serious people in this world. 9. The deal. Plus, friends, I'm already starting to search, probably for the last entry point. Today I will finish my acceleration with this. Let's go. A little later, I still return to the same chart. Right now I'm opening a short position. Let me comment on my analysis, the last deal for today. Immediately, as everything is ambiguous, all right? In general, what I noticed is that we have a trading range within the range. At the same time, the price bounced off the upper boundary, and I see this level that has not yet been reached. So, in my opinion, it's worth expecting further decline. Although maybe I'm hoping for the best. While there's time, I'll summarize. Friends, the financial system is changing along with the world, and it seems that it always strives to solve previous problems. At least I strongly believe in this. It is quite possible that in the near future we will face new reforms. Maybe all countries will equate to cryptocurrencies, create something new, universal, independent. Some kind of means of settlement that the entire planet will recognize. That would be cool. We cannot know for sure, but we can always be confident that the principles of trading and analysis will not change here. Therefore, we will be able to continue earning. Great, friends. The trade closes in profit in the last seconds. That's $26.15. Wonderful. The goal is achieved. Let's probably wrap up today's trading session on this note. So, ladies and gentlemen, how do you like the result? In a couple of hours, I increased the initial deposit by 260 times. And along the way, I told you about the main stages of the development of the global currency system. Now, you can talk about this during a social conversation. And in general, overall, it's better to understand what the global economy represents. I think my trading strategy of 3 indicators will also appeal to many of my viewers. Use it in its pure form, or you can modify it at your discretion. The main thing is that everything works out for you in the long run. By the way, friends, a small request for my efforts. Please always like and be sure to subscribe to the channel if for some reason you haven't done so yet. Any of your activity is absolutely a motivator for me to release new and higher quality videos. I would also be happy if you leave comments under this video, share your thoughts. I always appreciate and read feedback. I try to take all your opinions into account in future videos. Now that's definitely all, friends. I bid you farewell, wishing you lots of good fortune, a peaceful sky above, and see you soon on my channel, everyone. Goodbye.